Hello and welcome to Thinkfit, Befit podcast. I'm Jennifer, sitting here with my co-chair Razzle Dazzle, Angela Dameline, and we are so excited to continue season 6. It's never going to stop, I hope. It's been so good on technology and the body's own technology, how it impacts our fitness, how it impacts our healing. We have a phenomenal guest to help us continue this conversation. Karla Bass, welcome to Thinkfit Befit.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so I think a perfect way to start is to get your introduction and we'll go from there.
I'm Karla. I have been with Synergy now for 21 years. I am one of Synergy's vice presidents. I'm a medical intuitive. Primarily, I have taught at naturopathic colleges. Primarily, what I'm doing now is I'm on Zoom calls all over the world, training people on our equipment, the Biomodulator Biotransducer. I've had 35 years of emotional release experience. So I really look to the body as not only an energetic system, but also how emotions impact the body, how our everyday stress levels impact what's going on in our lives. We have the biomodulator and biotransducer. Actually, Dr. Tennant, we came out with our first biomodulator in 2004. Have had incredible stories since then. About 4 years later, we came out with the biotransducer. The difference between these two is the biomodulator, primarily in the majority of its accessories, are microcurrent. So that's going to be using uh, electromagnetic energy to put into the body through microcurrent, which means it's going to be touching the body. There's going to be a tingling sensation. You may have experienced this going through the chiropractor when they put pads on you prior or after working on you. This is going to be put voltage in through the central nervous system, the meridian system, muscle battery packs. So when we talk about the biotransducer, which is an accessory to the biomodulator, we're talking about putting scalar energy in. Scalar energy will reverse polarity, but scalar energy also goes down deep into the body, has the ability to go past the blood-brain barrier. So it can go down deep into the brain. It can go deep into an organ. So having these two different energies working together is very powerful.
I
We have,
have been able. Oh, sorry.
you what?
Oh, I was just going to reflect. I've been able to experience, you know, some of the protocols and having my polarity switched on, and it's just so lovely. So, and more than lovely,
Amazing.
it's yeah, it's amazing.
Well, there are thousands of little vortexes in the body that when they're going clockwise, they're bringing energy in. When they're going counterclockwise, they're spewing energy out. That is why it's so important to make sure your polarity is correct. And this again is done with the biotransducer and the scalar energy. We have a daily protocol, which I think maybe both of you have experienced. How we start that daily protocol, this is one of my favorite things the biomodulator does, and that's resetting the autonomic nervous system. So that would be taking you out of parasympathetic on, putting you into parasympathetic on. Very important. In the world we live in today and our busy lives, it's very easy to go into fight or flight, deer in the headlights. When this happens, either our energy freezes or our energy starts going to our limbs, getting ready to run or fight. Not a good place for the energy because the energy is needed to stay in the core of the body to maintain the health in the body and continue healing. So this is, 8 to 11 minutes. And I've done this on hundreds of people throughout my career. It amazes me to watch people just literally change in front of your eyes. Resetting the autonomic nervous system also, we'll do a cranial sacral alignment, which is alignment of the bones in the brain. We'll do a spinal alignment, resets the cranial sacral pump, which is the pump that pumps the fluid between the brain and the spine. You think about just what the pineal itself does. These are literally the living waters around the pineal. It also can help balance blood pressure. It's good for everything from PTSD to things like TMJ to pressure in the eyes with glaucoma. There's many things that one thing does. It also has the potential to close the pyloric and ileocecal valves in the digestive system that have a tendency to stay open when we're in fight or flight, which create leaky gut. So this one thing I really love. Then we start talking about resetting polarity. As Jen mentioned, this is accomplished by holding the biotransducer on the head. Um, and when you have one of our pro devices, we recommend that you do this in harmonics, which is the Schumann resonance field of the earth. This also will help ground your energy, which we know this is very important. We hear a lot about grounding these days. The next step would be taking the biotransducer. And, the first two steps are really going in, getting the body ready to receive energy. So then we go in with the biotransducer. We start treating at the umbilicus, the neonatal wiring system. That is, every nerve in the body is attached to the navel. So we start putting energy in there. The last step to the daily protocol is going to be using hand and feet electrodes for total body voltage, using the uh, acupuncture points in the hands and feet to actually go in and energize the entire body. Once we do this, we start looking at specific places that you want to treat. For instance, back injuries uh, are wonderful with the biomodulator. Just resetting the ANS is wonderful. But then we also have ways of putting microcurrent in point specific, using the biotransducer point specific. And I can tell you from previous experiences, um, putting this energy into the body really can help the pain levels as well as the healing levels. Our frequencies are based more on healing the individual cell versus, like with Rife technology, Rife frequencies primarily are designed to kill virus and bacteria. So if we start killing too much virus and bacteria in somebody who's chronically ill, that can create more problems because you've got the die-off backing off. So that you have to do a lot of very deep detoxing using those frequency sets. We look at more at healing the individual cell so it can reproduce. A normal cell will run at minus 25 millivolts. A healthy cell, a cell that's either in high healing, making a new cell, is going to be minus 50 millivolts. When we start getting into these plus numbers, we start looking at degenerative problems. So this, our equipment and our treatments actually go in and start even addressing the mitochondria of the cell, to go in and work with turning in, creating a healthy environment. Dr. Tennant talks about whenever there is enough voltage in the system and the system can balance, it balances the pH in the system and nothing harmful can grow. When someone is not holding their voltage, we start looking at 5 different factors. The first one would be the teeth. Every tooth in the mouth is connected to a meridian. So we start looking at, one of my favorite stories is Dr. Tennant, when he was sick, was talking about his left eye hurt, his spleen hurt, and his left big toe hurt. And he was trying to figure out how all that was connected. Well, that's all connected on the spleen meridian. He had an infected root canal on the spleen meridian tooth extracted. And within 48 hours, he had healthy white cells being produced out of his spleen again. So, we look at the body like the electrical system. Dr. Tennant talks about, you have a fuse in your house go out and you replace the fuse, everything else comes back on. This is kind of how we are looking at that. So root canals, infected crowns, cavitations where a tooth has been removed and there has been tissue left in the body, can create an infection. Those are the things that we're looking for in dental. Our next scenario is emotions. We know emotions play an incredible important role. If we are, I love to use this example because our auric field isn't completely developed until we're in puberty. So anything that happens pre-puberty goes right into the system. When we're little, we don't have the emotional capacity to process things, and we start putting things in a little ball. Well, this little ball is in the energy field, and it not only can create a repeated pattern, but it also can start going into the physical body itself and creating illness. So we really look at getting to um, the core of the emotional. We have different protocols for emotional release. Like I say, I've done that work for 35 years. Dr. Tennant also does that protocol with one of his practitioners out of his clinic that can be done telemedicine. But it's really funny. People will call me, and they'll, for instance, have an eye condition, and they'll say, and I'll look at them. I'll say, "No, what was going on in your life emotionally when that happened?" And they'll sit there and think, "Oh, nothing." Then all of a sudden, it was like, "Oh, wait a minute. That's when I had a really traumatic event. What do you not want to see?" Same thing with hearing, same thing with, just anything that goes on into the body. So the next thing we look at is going to be the endocrine system, primarily the thyroid and the adrenals. When you start looking at just what the thyroid gland does for the body, how it controls the hormones it produces, it's a master gland. When that is off, so much in the body can go off. So when that starts going wrong, excuse me, we start looking at, having things like your T3, T4, TSH tested with your thyroid, getting on appropriate medication to get that corrected. And of course, we recommend, you go the natural route as much as possible. The next thing we're starting to look at are toxins. What's in our environment? Are you in a moldy house? Are you someplace where, there's different things being sprayed in the air? Is your water affected? Are there heavy metals from mercury fillings in your mouth? So we start looking at ways to detox. And again, Dr. Chase Faldmo and Dr. Tennant's clinic has got a remarkable homeopathic detox program that we recommend. The next thing we look at is scars and tattoos. All of those beautiful tattoos that people put on their bodies are lovely, but you start thinking just like a scar. Anytime you go into the energy field and cut the energy field, it links. So we have protocols to actually go in with the biotransducer, biomodulator, essential oils, and to close those scars energetically. Have closed many scars like C-section scars, open heart surgery, back scars. Even that little scar on your knee that you got when you were 3 years old can be leaking energy. So we have a way of
Mm.
closing those. And it's remarkable, when people start closing, especially the big, scars, pain goes away. They have better function of the body. Their body starts healing. So, these are the things that we look at, to help heal the body with the energy leaks. So you can actually use the biomodulator as you're going through these healing processes as a battery pack to kind of help hold the energy, continue building the energy until then.
Hmm.
So rich. Everything that you just said, gosh, it resonates completely with what we're seeing with people. And that's one of the reasons why um, we're inviting all of our clients to really embrace the wholeness, because there's times when they come in for one thing and we know that they're not going to achieve that one thing, whether it's a like resolution of pain in their knee or something, if they don't look at these 5 factors in particular. This emotional piece, what I loved about what you said and about the protocols is that this is more about making us stronger and shoring up our own capacity and honoring the body's innate intelligence to heal rather than just shooting at moving targets of, oh, this virus, this bacteria, like what you were saying, the distinction between rife and the biomodulator and tenant frequencies is like, let's get stronger. And then we won't have to worry
Right.
about X, Y, and Z, right? We cast the widest net, right?
Well, and Angela, emotions are so important. You know, just learning to sometimes forgive the unforgivable can be about, it's more of, it's about forgiving the person and giving yourself a lot of peace, but it's also about, just learning to let it go. Let it go. It's something that happened in the past. It's still controlling your life today. Is that really worth giving your power and energy to, giving your life force to? Every time you have that trigger on that emotion from that memory, think about what it does to your energy system. And, we all live in a field, we're all connected. So every time you have that thought, it is affecting that other person somehow, some way. Just works that way. So the more we can kind of call our spirit back, call our energy back, learn to contain that, the better off we're going to be.
Yes, I love making that a part of my maintenance as just made it, an acceptable way to view my being as, I have an emotional capacity and I want to expand in different ways. How do I continue to um mind my soil and be able to grow? I and working in such like a physical modality as neuromuscular work, and
Right.
we also use a what is it? A sophisticated electrical stim device that's oh man, it's been such a game changer for me to see and utilize the electricity in the body. And so along comes Angela with her I just all of her beautiful life force energy for continuing that journey, right? And now you've brought in the tenant devices into this business that I've built and nurtured. So I kind of, took a hard turn there off of emotions, but just to say, like, I'm very excited to continue to experience different forms of working with my body, especially with this electrical component, because I
True.
didn't fully get it until a couple years ago, even though I was working the system through the muscles. Because what I've heard a bunch of times from Angela, Dr. Tennant's books, the muscles are a battery pack. And, and I've just been working with this system for so long, but I didn't get the voltage piece until fairly recently. And now I just see everything in this context of electricity and electromagnetic frequencies. Um, so again, just like so glad to have this stuff here. And when so yeah, go ahead and I don't know, tell them. I want to know. I want to hear from you, Angela, like your experience with going to Texas and learning and getting, meeting Karla and learning all this wonderful stuff.
Yeah, well, first, I'll just say it's so special to be here with you. And I've seen Jen work miracles. She's a miracle worker in her own right. And nobody loves muscles more than Jen. And I've seen her really skillfully address emotional, kind of tie in what you were saying, emotional pieces with people in indirect ways that's extremely wise. And also, let's just gives it to people straight, like, hey, this is what's necessary, within measure, right? Because I heard you say something beautiful in Texas, like if you bring up something too soon for someone, you can fry their nervous system in terms
Mm.
of emotion. So I would like to ask about that, but I'll address what Jen was just saying. What a wonderful experience in Texas. Just all of you were so warm and skillful and caring. Like I could just feel that it's palpable how much every single person on Synergy's team and I was speaking at Tenant really is passionate about healing the world, which is, and we all know, like we see it day in and day out. People are not okay.
Right.
And we're here to offer our life's devotion to our part of making just like you're saying, we're all one and we're all in this field. So what part can we play? And these tools are just really powerful ways for us to extend our heart. But that was like kind of in a nutshell, everything. Just it was just wonderful to see everyone. And the thing that stood out to me the most was everyone's heart, and also what a joy to see how um, Dr. Tennant interacted with everyone when there, and how much everybody just cares about each other. And the testimonies were incredible. But kind of wrapping back around, so much, so much happening, so much all the things. But I would love to hear from you and your experience about addressing these deep emotional things that we see in people. We all have blind spots, and how do you understand or know how to approach something that you see that someone may not see? How do you know for their readiness?
I started asking lots of questions. I was one of those that walked in that I could actually kind of sense and see what happened with someone. Um, I'm trained in holographic repatterning, which is now called resonance repatterning, where we are actually going in and muscle checking, age, who's involved, what was the scenario, and you can kind of get to a point. And if people kind of just draw a blank and they don't remember, I don't go there. I let them and talk to them go to where they are ready because like I say, I personally had the experience of somebody said, this happened to you at 4 years old, and I was not ready to look at it.
Mm.
So it was a deep personal experience, but I could also see how it had created a repeated pattern throughout my life. And at that point in time, I had a single mom, two little boys, did not want to bring those patterns into their lives as well. So I really worked hard to do that. And the more I worked at it, the more I was just really convinced I wanted to help others. So I had this kind of, intuitive talent coming in, and I'd really prayed, how do I use this? And more, this work was introduced to me, and more. I used to see hundreds of clients. I was one of the first ones doing energy shift work in Dr. Tennant's clinic years ago. I do a little bit of that online with people, just kind of getting to the point, like I said before, what was going on with your eyes when your eye problems started, and it's really interesting because you'll watch people and you kind of sit back, you ask the question and you wait and you watch the light bulb go on and they go, oh, wait a minute. Then they're at that point. Then we can go where they need to go, but only as deep as they're willing to go. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's really loving on people and just let them be where they need to be in that moment.
Beautifully said. This is loving on people and allowing them to be. I receive so much from your answer. Um, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about scalar frequencies in the biotransducer in nature. Because quite frankly, I read Dr. Tennant's book and I listened to him talk about it, and I still kind of don't understand it. Um, Except for
Well,
that, it's in nature. Like, that's one of the reasons why everybody feels so great at the beach. Like this isn't something new and crazy. This is like just something that we're tapping into. That's what part of my understanding. But I would love to hear you talk about scalar and the complement to the electromagnetic frequencies or the electricity that we're harnessing here.
I get tickled at people. Scalar is a new buzzword in science, and
Mm.
a lot of people, not necessarily Dr. Tennant, but a lot of people keep trying to make it something solid, and it's located in this part of the body, and it does this. And the fact of the matter is, scalar is life force. It's chi. It's energy. It's what comes from the sun. It's what comes from the earth. It's what we exchange when we hug each other. It is what actually keeps us alive. It is energy. So I always like to kind of simplify that with people because they're always wanting to put protons and neutrons, and I just went, that's not what it is. But the same thing, trying to make a chakra solid, and make it something physical. It is not. It's energy. And just because maybe we don't see it, and maybe we don't experience like we want to in a 3D world, then we try to start putting all these other um, situations on it that it's not. So I really want to keep that simple. What makes the flowers grow? What makes the flowers bloom? What creates, our when someone's born, what is that? So it is that energy. And I think the more we come into our hearts and out of our heads, the more we start understanding what that is. The electromagnetic energy is going to be the electrical field in the body. So you see the electrical field, you can look at the meridian system and you see where the energy flows up and down the body, as well with the muscle battery packs, as well with the central nervous system. So you see this electrical energy. So, you know, we AMA measures electrical energy with EEGs and EKGs, but up until now, there are a lot of studies being done with AMA with electrical energy. I know there was some MS studies out of Wisconsin on, I think in maybe 2012, where they were actually applying microcurrent to the tongue of patients with MS and having wonderful success. So we're just starting to kind of turn that around and look at that. This, as you know, Rife, Tesla, all of these people were very, very popular in the early 1900s. And after World War II, with some of the experiments Hitler was doing, it all went away. As well as, the Rothschilds coming in and really putting money in developing, the current system we have now, which kind of took all alternative healing off the table. So, I was raised in a medical family. My mother was a nurse. She was bought into AMA, and I watched her go through 9 fusions in her back and neck, had metal bars put in to support that. Couldn't walk the last 10 years of her life. And I was really kind of dedicated to go, what is it can help people? As you ladies are doing. What is it could have made a difference in her life? And it's very interesting because the weekend, my first conference I did with Synergy was the weekend my mother passed away, which I thought that was interesting timing. So I've always kind of looked for things like that. What is the root cause? We have looked so deeply into how we can help people. And, I love doing the Zoom calls around the world because I get asked the most interesting questions, about all kinds of medical conditions. And I always go back to the voltage piece. Where's the voltage piece missing? How can we get that in the body? I have had amazing stories with people, and not only can this technology be used on humans, but it can be used on animals as well. So, I've worked on everything from lizards to horses, and
Well, our
everything.
assistant manager here is a dog, so
Okay, well, it's just, using that. Now, with the animals, you're going to be using the scalar energy with the transducer. With the biomodulator microcurrent, you're going to have to be touching bare skin in order to get the voltage in. So anyone who's extremely has a lot of body hair in a place you're wanting to treat, you might have to do a little bit of shaving to get the microcurrent in, or use the biotransducer.
I think it's when you were sharing about your mother, of course, my mom's stories always pop up, especially this season. It's really been popping up because so much of my work is based on watching her suffer and being in that. And she was a nurse as well. Definitely bought in until, a couple of years after she was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease. And so what came to mind is so many of our clients, so many people listening all over the world, I hear over and over and over again, people are motivated by what they're seeing in this older generation, whether it is over reliance and over trust on certain things, like taking 2 or more pharmaceuticals, and also, not interested in any type of lifestyle change or discomfort. I
I
remember one Thanksgiving, um, we were having a good time. My dad, he's known for his marijuana use, and so we're all having fun. And I was just off of doing some of my Wim Hof ice, bath and all that certification. So I'm like, Dad, you gotta do this. So I'm like trying to convince my dad to get in the cold water at the Thanksgiving table, little blitzed. And he's just like, "No way, I'm not touching cold water." And then I said, "What's it with you with people not wanting to be uncomfortable?" Because it's like, I mean, I'm saying 3 minutes, we can do this, right? And
Oh,
he's like,
absolutely you can. And it's wonderful for the immune system.
"Yeah."
Jen, I honestly, I am 69 now, and
Love it.
I'm right with you. I'm, you know, what is it new? How can we change? What can we need to do? And I work with. I have learned that you don't run after your families are the hardest sometimes. You don't push anyone, and they come to you when they're ready.
Mhm.
That's the first part. Also, if you are over 50, there are 5 drugs they want you on regardless whether you need them or not. Back in 2012, I went into the hospital with pneumonia and got out of there real fast.
Yay.
Um, the doctor walked up and said, "Are you on these 5 drugs?" And I was like, "No, sir, I'm not. I'm not going on them." And he was like, "Well, little lady, I'm the doctor, and and I was like, and I'm the patient, and I'm your boss, and this is my body, and I'll put in it
Yeah.
when I want to." And he got real, he's writing these prescriptions, and I said, "You're wasting the paper you're putting those on. I will never go on those unless I absolutely need them, and that's going to have to be, something we'll talk about." But on
Yeah.
the other hand, and this is a pretty big hospital in Dallas at the time, all the nurses kept coming up. I mean, that had nurses waking me up in the middle of the night going, "What are you doing? You are the only one on this floor not on any kind of prescription drug." So it was interesting how, the doctors were kind of like, the nurses were more like, "I want to know what you're doing."
Mm.
Um, you know, my heart goes out to the doctors. It really does, because they're under standard of care and they're afraid they're going to lose their license, and many have, if they don't stay within that standard of care protocol. So that's part of what's going on. Um, this is why I've chosen to work with alternative medicine. This is why I went to work with Dr. Tennant, because I saw what he was doing. I saw what a difference he was making. I mean, I'm still, uh, Dr. Tennant has got a photographic memory and is also a speed reader and has the capacity to hold huge amounts of information, even at 83, in his mind, and being able to pick and choose and layer what works. He's brilliant. So, to be able to really kind of work with someone like that has been such a beautiful opportunity. And so I'm so deeply grateful for it. And we continue. Your mom has Lou Gehrig's. Dr. Tennant spoke at an ALS convention probably about a year and a half ago. And a family member had ALS. And I've watched him more than once to go, "Okay, we're going to go after that. We're going to figure this out."
Mm.
And in October, when we had the conference, he had 9 ALS patients in the clinic at one time that are there for 3 weeks at a time.
Mm.
At the end of the Friday, I have to tell this story because it touches my heart so deeply. Is at the end of the Friday, he said, I have a surprise for all of you. And he rolls this beautiful woman in a wheelchair. And she's on her computer, communicating, laughing, cutting up with all of us. And he was saying that prior to her coming in, she had no muscle control. She could not communicate. Her body was shutting down,
Mm.
nothing. So within 3 weeks of being in the clinic, was able to communicate on her computer, was able to walk with assistance, was able to, kick a ball. I mean, she was communicating. It was like her world had opened back up, and it was grace to watch. And I work with a lot of ALS patients, on follow up with biomodulator protocol after they've come home from the clinic, and we're still watching people make wonderful results. So I just get to the point of everything is possible. I
Mm.
my dad was told from the time he was 53 until he passed away at 87. I think the doctors came in at least a dozen times and said he's got 6 months to live. And after the first time, I was like, we're not going to tell him that anymore, because you really don't know. That's between he and God and his will to live, and you just don't know. So let's not do that. But we have watched things turn around that nobody can understand. I've watched people who have been they're at their last. They've been everywhere. They're at their last uh, hope. They come into Dr. Tennant's clinic and he's able to help them. We watch this over and over again. One of my former students at the naturopathic college called me one day. She goes, you got to hear this story. She was at a convention with a infectious disease expert, and the woman was telling her about this patient that had traveled all over the world. They couldn't find out what was wrong with her or how to treat her. And the doc looked over to my former student who's a naturopath and said, and then she found this guy in Texas. My former student said, are you talking about Dr. Tennant? She goes, how did you know? So, I mean, his
Mm.
reputation really reaches far and wide. So, we're kind of like the wind between under his wings. We're the support system. How is it we can come in and support this teaching, support, people getting well, because we deeply care about people and we do want to be here to support them any way we can.
It's so evident. And I mean, if we didn't have to finish this podcast, I would have just taken a minute to really process that story you said about the woman getting out of the wheelchair. Like that's just really like
Well, it was with
it's
assistance.
it's
It
really
wasn't by herself,
incredible.
but still,
Yes, yes.
still, you
Yes,
know,
it's really and the care, like I was saying, is so evident, and then not only that, but then the clarity and curiosity, like to get to the root, because nobody gets caught up in the pity, but there's like clearly this empowerment and an understanding and a reverence for the body and a curiosity. How can we tap in? Because there's so much, like you said, we just don't know. And even when I was there, when there was a young man in the conference with his mom, I think he was like 20 or 21, real handsome young guy. And his testimony was that he had leukemia, or he had been diagnosed with leukemia a few months before, and then did the Tenet protocols. And as of that day, I think it had been 2 months, was cancer free. And so just, I mean, the testimonials that
everything's
I heard at the
everything's
right.
possible. Yeah,
Mm.
everything. We can never make any promises, and I never do, but everything is possible. It just is. Just is.
Mm. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Uh, I I had totally had a question, and always at this point I'm like, I get a little lost and excited, and it's a great feeling. No, don't get me wrong. I love sharing this stuff on the podcast, and it gives me so much hope. One, our clients, the people that come see us aren't there, in the wheelchair and this and that. They're teetering between who do I trust? What
Yeah.
messaging do I trust? And they're starting to pick up on intuition. It's so exciting when they, when it clicks. And so, yeah, and even if they say, "Oh, I wanna get stronger, this and that," and then you look at their medications and they're on, like, Fosamax. You're like, "Oh, okay,"
Yeah.
but they still wanna get stronger, and we have these resources, and it's so exciting to, I don't empower. It's always about empowering here and on the podcast.
Well, and Jen, the beauty of that is you offer some of these modalities to people and they start feeling better.
Mm,
And when they start feeling better, they're like, well, wait a minute. We're not doctors, so we really can't prescribe you to get off. We're not. But, you know, when they start feeling better
mhm,
and then you kind of like introduce them to another way, it changes
yes.
everything.
Mhm,
And I never say, do not go to your doctor, do not do this. I always say, follow your heart and listen to your body because
mm.
you're the one that is in charge there and you're the one that will make that decision in the long run.
Yeah, in particular, one of the things that you mentioned in the beginning about the autonomic nervous system and the valves reset, because some people are coming to us like they're itching to fire their doctor, right? So we don't even, like you were saying, we don't recommend anything like to stop seeing them, but we just invite their curiosity. And in particular, a lot of people are experiencing acid reflux, like what you were saying,
Right?
and digestive
Right.
issues. And so our question is, how about and they're then prescribed these very dangerous drugs or powerful drugs, proton pump inhibitors, antacids, all of these
Yeah.
things. And that can then cascade down. And so what we're trying to do together with your help and just their own curiosity is, can we make the appropriate connections and correlations with our help? And I heard Dr. Tennant say one time about people just think, oh, they're getting older and they have less energy. And he's like, no, you mustn't think like that. Like, there's a reason that you have less energy,
True.
right? And so, like, to get the right connections made between stress and your digestion, right? Which it's not gonna, it's not a, you're not, it's not an antacid deficiency that's causing the problem, or like that you're not pooping right, all of these things.
The gut controls a lot. It controls most of what goes on in the body. And if your digestive system isn't working right, your body's not working right.
Mm.
And people fall back on acids or on laxatives or and you're just making the situation worse. Um, that's that whole thing of, if you can give them the opportunity just to feel a little bit better, they kind of and pique their curiosity, and then all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, what can I do better? Everything's possible. You know, I'll share this story. Um, my husband, he doesn't mind I share this. He's in his 80. He fell last year, slipped on the ice, which Artie is like, when people find out how old he is, they're like, what? Because he acts like a 50 or 60-year-old and maybe younger at times. But fell and slipped on on the ice, cracked 5 ribs. Three
Mm.
of them were transverse process, which attached to the spine. We went to ER and they're
Oof.
like, oh,
Ouch.
at your age, 6 months, you'll never have range of motion. And it was like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's like, whatever.
Mhm.
And he lived in that biomodulator, conductive pads and wires, alternating it with the transducer. Never took pain meds. Maybe took a little Tylenol. I'll take that back. Took a little Tylenol, but and we did some other injections and things. But in 6 weeks, he was well. We went,
Yeah, go Bill.
Woo-hoo!
yeah, we
Yeah.
went back to the doctor, and the doctor was going. The doctor actually was one of my former students. She goes, I know what Karla does, but you're incredible. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, I broke my wrist 8 years ago. Doctor, same thing. You're going to be in a cast 3 to 6 months. And I'm like, I don't have time for this. I was traveling with Dr. Tennant. I was on the computer a lot. So I either had the biomodulator or biotransducer on me 24/7. I went
Mm.
back to the doctor in a month and he went, what are you doing? You're healing too fast. And I said, am I healing well? He said, you're healing very well. What are you doing? And I told him. He rolled his eyes. My 10 minutes is up, and he walked out the door.
Yeah.
But when I got to PT, they were like, no, really, what are you doing? And had me bringing the biomodulator in to work on their clients. So, I mean, we have all these little stories. And, things like my son, when he was 11, he's now 34, brown recluse spider bite. You take him to the ER, his arm's going to fall off. And, bring him back in a week and watch him. I had the biomodulator. It's before the transducer. I had the conductive pads and wires on him most of the time. We're doing poultice. Took him back in the week, and the nurse was really angry with me. She goes, I don't know why you've got your son in here. And I said, well, look at his record. You told me to bring him back in. Brown recluse spider bite. She said, there's no way this was a brown recluse spider bite.
Mm.
So, I mean, even those kind of things, respiratory infections, broken bones, cancers. I mean, no matter what is going on with the body, the voltage is low. You start restoring the voltage. It gives the body its ability to heal.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
So exciting.
So exciting.
I have so much faith in humanity after these things, and just all that is received. And well, it's time to ask one of our favorite questions before we sign off, Karla. I I would love to chat with you in the future about medical intuition,
Okay.
because man, there's just too many times where I'm like,
Yeah, Jen has definitely spoken things and then like, wow, it's been true. And so I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Well,
capacity.
listen to that and trust
Yeah.
it, because it is true.
Okay, let's get the lasso. Um, our favorite question: what is your favorite snack?
I'm not a big snacker,
Mm.
but I have a tendency to go to maybe yogurt
Mhm.
or snack. A little bit of fruit, try to stay away from the sugars. I'm just not a big snacker.
Oh, okay.
We'll accept fruit and yogurt.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your wisdom, your light, and your experience, and sharing that all with us and Thinkfit, Befit.
You ladies, thank you for the opportunity. It is such a blessing to be able to just continue to spread this news and do everything we can to help mankind. That's what we're here for.
Fabulous.